What's up, everyone? Welcome to 40 Ounce Hip Hop. Today, we're going to be cracking the top four. So we have number 4 and 3. Finally? Man. And I think we're going to have to come from the West Coast. Transplants. And the man that also is the king of the West Coast at the moment, if I would say so.
Crowned by Snoop and Dre themselves.
Exactly. It's like, but he has some interesting compadres in the game that are saturating the mix. So before we do that, before we get a little saucy up here, I'm gonna need y'all to grab your Bibles and maybe grab a shorty. And bitch, it better be a 40. Because we about to pull up. So today, I think if you think about the King of the West, who are you thinking about? R.I.P. Nipsey Hussle, of course. Some people they like the names like YG or who else would really be the King of the West? Snoop. I mean, OGs, yeah, like Snoop.
I mean, fellow Black Hippie members.
Yeah, Schoolboy Q, J-Rock,
Blue. Our boy Blue from number 19 in the countdown, or number 18 from the countdown.
It's like, there's a lot of people that tried to go for Dom Kennedy. Shout out Dom.
Odd Future.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Clipping.
There's a lot of artists that really want to lay claim to that title of the West Coast King. But I think if you probably notice there's a mission of someone in that list that is pretty obvious. And especially nowadays, and what his influence and his mainstream appeal has garnered him, including 13 Grammy Awards, 2 American Music Awards, 5 Billboard Music Awards, a Brit Award, and so much other shit.
Man.
We're talking about the Kendrick Lamar.
Duckworth.
Yes, Duckworth.
Yeah, I mean, when you're crowned by The Game, Snoop Dogg, and Dr. Dre, I don't think there's really any debate if you're the king of that West Coast. Also, Kendrick Lamar also said himself that he's the king of both coasts on the song Control. I don't know. We'll talk about that later, I think. But yeah, obviously there's a few candidates for what album we're actually referring to on this list, right? He's dropped many great albums, but for this number 4 slot, we were referring to his 2015 album, To Pimp a Butterfly.
Yep. To Pimp a Butterfly, released March 15th, 2015. TDE Entertainment are following up the already amazing album of Good Kid, Mad City.
Yes.
To Pimp a Butterfly went into a very different direction from Good Kid, Mad City.
No doubt.
And I think, including like the first single to drop, it was very. The lead single was being I and Black of the Berry. You could automatically tell that Kendrick was in a different state than what he was. And he had this message that was going to be pervasive throughout To Pimp a Butterfly was one of a more, I guess, political and just social conscience, more direct rather than not illusion, but more of an introspective tale, more of like this is my perspective on the world, on the current standings of the world as an outsider.
Yeah, Kendrick had been going down that route for a while because Section 80 and Good Kid, Mad City, I think, were both conscious albums that were about, I guess Section 80 is focused on someone who's from the hood but born in the 80s or whatever, in that environment. And then Good Kid, Mad City kind of takes it to that next level of making it kind of like a concept album, telling a story throughout. So this one, he keeps the similar theme of being conscious, but it's no longer hood tales. It's black empowerment now is the theme. It's trend setting. It feels new when he did it, right?
Yeah, that's a funny thing. It's like it's funny to say it feels new because some of the artists that he chose on here are kind of older representations of and people who have championed Black Power or like are symbols of, I guess, Black Power in the entertainment industry for a long time, such as Ronald Isley, the Isley Brothers, Snoop Dogg, Bilal, George Clinton. Is like James Fontour, who's written a shit ton of things. Kamasi Washington, Flying Lotus, Terrence Martin. It's like all these people, and shout out to my girl Rhapsody. It's like all the, and of course, appearance, the legendary thing of this album, him having Tupac sample on it. It's all just a way of him championing the black sound and the black experience, but also making comments on the black experience. And granted, it's like a better mixture of his perspective, his tales, but I guess projected on a wider scale that more people could understand and feel. And it's not just a hood tale. It's like, hey, it's with songs like Complexion and Black of the Berry, and honestly,
you could pick any song as an example.
Institutionalized. All these songs have themes that permeate throughout Black America.
I really love the way that it's not just the lyrical change for that shift towards black empowerment. He takes it a step further by saying, like, he changed the sound with it too. Like you said, it's really notable with the personnel, like the guest features that he selected to be on here, to kind of use some of the veterans of some soul and funk genres within the past 20 or so years. So like with this album, I mean, obviously he's from the West Coast, so it's always been West Coast hip hop. But this is more like traditional 90s G-funk. Like he wanted that sound in there, which of course that's based off of older soul and funk type sounds. And so in making a black empowerment album, he also wanted to incorporate more traditional black American music.
Yeah, it's interesting that even though he incorporated familiar sounds, and even though he did that, it still, like you said, feels new, especially for the time frame of when this dropped in 2015. No way else was really trying to promote this on the main stage, I guess, of premier mainstream hip hop. It's like no one else was. I think other people. I won't say no one else was trying to promote this. I'd be lying if I said that.
No one on the mainstream level was
successful enough to do such and get it to permeate and be a central focus for the world and for the hip hop world again, which is an incredible thing to do. And it's interesting to see how music actually, I feel like, shifted and kind of allowed for more of these topics to be championed on a mainstream stage post to Pimp Butterfly. It's similar to, like, Joey Badass, American
All-American Badass.
Yeah.
I think we've seen a lot of rappers shift towards the black empowerment type movement thing, which has been really neat to see. But it's like it's a direct result of America as a whole shifting that way. But for Kendrick to release this in early 2015, like it was a bigger deal coming out then than if it had came out in the year 2020.
Honestly, at this point, I don't know, because 2020 is kind of fun.
Well, I'm saying 2020, you kind of see the movement.
Yeah.
You see it coming into like a.
It's like a culmination in like.
Yeah,
Apex.
that's a good. You see it all culminating together. For this to come out 5 years ago, when like the term Black Lives Matter was barely even a thing yet, like. I think it was a bigger deal that it came out in 2015. Like, it came out at the perfect time, I felt like.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, because even with songs like on songs Black and Berry, he talks about like Trayvon Martin and whatnot. For him to be a lead single for your project was pretty amazing and powerful. I think at that time it really sent a message, because Kendrick, as we said, is king of the West Coast, or is deemed the king of the West Coast by many and by himself. I think he's also championed as one of the three kings of like the newer, I guess, late 2000s or now to generation, like early or to 2010s to this generation, like along with Drake and J. Cole.
Of course, yeah.
So And Wale, according to Wale. But oh jeez. But it's interesting for one of these major figureheads in hip hop to choose to go down this path. While J. Cole always has talked about his songs, like one of my favorite songs on Friday Night Lights, he talks about like the changes he wants to see in his communities and whatnot. But that wasn't, Friday Night Lights wasn't anticipated, nor has it been championed to the same point or promoted to the same point as To Pimp a Butterfly. And it's
to see an artist go down the conscious route. Like, obviously there's so many conscious rappers that maybe might not be on the mainstream level that J. Cole and Kendrick are, but even for mainstream rappers, you've seen, like, it's definitely been a thing throughout the decade for rappers to start going down that route. Like, I think J. Cole probably had already been going down that route before this came out. I just don't think a project that was like from top to bottom concept entirely dedicated to that, we just hadn't seen it yet.
Yeah, like among this generation, especially among that on this scale, no, definitely not. And I think for as a project, you know what's funny, because we talked about legacies before, about like the projects, and I remember this album came out. A lot of people I talked to that liked Good Kid, Mad City did not like this project.
Really?
Yeah, and a lot of people, they said they were like, or they didn't say they didn't like it. They was like, yeah, it's cool, but I don't want to listen to it. Like, I don't, it wasn't really like what they wanted to hear at the time, which is incredible because it's, I understand Good Kid, Mad City, it's Good Kid, Mad City, greatness, but it's interesting to see how this album could be off-putting to some, and how it would be, how later on, as the years went on, those same people I'm talking about now champion this album. Is like, oh, this is an excellent project. Like, this is, I love institutionalized now. Like, oh, hood politics is hard as hell. It was like,
So do you think it was more, for when talking about their initial reaction, do you think it was more because of the change in sound, or because of the change from where Section 80 and Good Kid were hood tales? Do you think it's they missed it being like that, or do you think it's because of the change in sound?
I think it was the change in sound more so, because even though it's, because not every the jazz influence and the inflections and the funk inflections that are really prevalent throughout this album aren't everyone's cup of tea when it comes to hip hop. So I understand that. And also his flow, like, for free, like, this thing ain't free. Like, that's a different type of, if you're not used to listening to something like that, you're gonna be like, or expecting that from Kendrick. You're gonna be like, oh, what am I, you went from Money Trees to this?
His voice sounds different too on a lot of songs, doesn't it?
Yes.
I remember when I dropped, people were like, why does he sound like that?
Yeah, I was confused too. I'm not gonna lie to you. That songs like You, like, which I love that track. It wasn't a Good Kid, Mad City, and I think a lot of people, Kendrick garnered a lot of fans of Good Kid, Mad City with songs like Swimming Pools, Money Trees, Poetic Justice. He has some very he had songs with really good replay value and versatile playability in different places.
Oh, like, for sure.
Like, in versatile settings, you know. For To Pimp a Butterfly, I think because of the topics, even though the themes are so applicable and are so surreal. I say surreal, but surreal in the sense of how true some of these may ring, how some of these truisms may apply to people, and how prevalent they are today. I think it's not as easy of a play for some than Good Kid, Mad City. And it's like, if you're not really trying to, like, you'd be like, do I want to listen to him talk about complexion, or do I want to hear him talk about swimming pools?
I know exactly what you mean, because with Good Kid, you had a bunch of songs that you could hear on the radio that ended up becoming on the radio. Songs that you're like, oh, I really dig that message, but this song sure does slap. Besides maybe All Right on this album, and I guess even though maybe I and All Right are probably the only two that you can say have that similar type of setup where it's like, oh, I dig the message, but I can really see it on, like, he didn't really care about where and when and who would listen to this. He just like, he made it with the message in mind.
Yeah, it's like he wasn't trying to make club hits or nothing. Like, and which I think songs like Poetic Justice and
Don't Kill My Vibe.
Yeah. Backseat Freestyle. Like, those are great party songs, great songs for a lot of different environments. But is this Mama? Like, who's gonna play Mama at the club? Like,
no one.
So who's gonna pull up somewhere and be like, you know what? I really gotta listen to Mortal Man. Like, at this function. It's like, even though Mortal Man's a beautiful song, it's not as easily applicable to a lot of like passive listening settings as I think Good Kid, Mad City was, which is a shame because this project has some of my favorite, honestly, Kendrick verses and production choices. Even though it's not as radio friendly in a way, it's still like Hood Politics is a classic sounding West Coast slapper. Like, geez, and the hooks on here are just catchy as hell. It's still like, I've been A once since day one, you niggas boo boo. Like, that is a institutionalized or even Mortal Man. Like, when shit hits the fan, is you still a fan? It's like all these hooks still stick with me to this day. Or King Kunta. It's great, and I think all these people that probably didn't appreciate it initially, or they respected it, but they don't really go back to listen to it as much. I think the reason why their vision just probably changed about it is just honestly getting comfortable with the idea of listening in different settings and trying to listen in different settings. Like, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna play this today here. I'm listening to it this time.
Oh, real quick before the next topic, you mentioning people's initial reaction when it first came out, it made me think back. I remember this album, it got leaked a couple days early, and I remember I was going through a phase where I wouldn't listen to any pirated I wouldn't listen to any leaks or any pirated music, and so I just remember everyone talking about it, and I was just like perpetually pissed off because I'm like, I want to listen to it, but I didn't cave in. I waited. I remember I pre-ordered the album too. Yeah, I've never done that.
You used to be like, yeah, I'm not gonna listen to it yet. I'm like, you sure? It's kind of fun.
You know, J. Cole had a pretty big impact on me in that way because, throughout Friday Night Lights on Autograph, even he has a specific verse where he calls out fans who bootleg his stuff. And then when Born Sinner came out, even though I didn't like Born Sinner, I remember I listened to it leaked, and I remember like the next day he was on tour, and he like called out all the fans, and he was like, this is paraphrasing, but he was like, man, who here liked the album? And like the crowd cheered, and he's like, well, fuck y'all, because you're not a fan if you listen to a leaked version of my album. And I was like, wow, damn. Anyways. So when we talked about Coloring Book, I mentioned that I thought it was the second most anticipated, hyped up album of the decade. Mm-hmm. Of course, number one I was referring to was this album, To Pimp a Butterfly. So Good Kid, Mad City came out October 2012. This came out in March of 2015. So 2.5 years roughly. Kind of similar to Chance in the way that I said that normally if you take that long, you lose hype. But Kendrick was able to successfully maintain that hype. And I think it was just because of how big and lasting, like Good Kid, Mad City, like it wasn't a short reaction to it. Like it was probably a full year that people were still reacting off of the novelty of Good Kid, Mad City. And I think that had lasting impressions. And then I think the 2013, the year after Good Kid, that was a big year for Kendrick popularity wise because he he had the Control verse where he declares himself the king of both the West Coast and the East Coast, or he says he's the king of New York, which means East Coast basically, and he calls out all of his peers, like when he says the same goes for Jermaine Cole, Big Crit, Wale, so on and so forth. So that was huge because that was such a big moment. And then like a month after that was the BET Awards, and I remember watching it on TV because I always wanted to tune in for the ciphers, because I was like, that was what you did with the BET Awards, is you'd watch, you know, a sports game on the other channel, and then you flip to the ciphers, and as soon as it's something that's not the ciphers, you just flip away.
Exactly.
And I remember
I don't give a damn who got video of the year.
Yeah, like I don't care about the awards. And so I remember they had a Black Hippie one, and Isaiah Rashad was new, so everyone had their turn taking their verses, and even Isaiah Rashad had a verse, and then Kendrick went last. And I remember at the time, like a semi beef with Drake had kind of been culminating or whatever. And a lot of it felt like it was kind of like a fake beef, like it didn't feel real. But I remember Kendrick went up there for that BET verse. And I just remember like every other word he said was censored on TV. It's like I couldn't even rock with, like, I was like, I guess he's rapping. I don't really know what he's saying because everything's censored. And like next thing I know, you read the lyrics and he's like, he's dissing Drake, I remember. So yeah, I remember between Control and the BET Awards, maybe some publicity from Macklemore winning the Grammy with the heist, just throughout 2013 over Good Kid, Mad City, because Good Kid, Mad City lost. I think those three events in 2013 really kept Kendrick's hype up instead of people forgetting about him. And then finally, when it came to time to making the album, I remember a story about him visiting Africa or something, and it was almost like his Malcolm X going to Mecca story or something. Like Africa was this epiphany moment for him. So I don't know. I think when I look back on the anticipation for this album, I really think about everything that occurred for Kendrick, specifically in the years leading up to the release.
Yeah, it's funny you mention like the Africa thing, because he did go to South Africa in 2014. And that's where like on the song like Mortal Man is like love me like Nelson. Yeah, is like because he went to Nelson Mandela's jail cell.
Had he passed away yet at that point?
Honestly, let me check that one.
Because man, it feels recent that Mandela died, but you know how time flies. Yeah.
But like, yeah, that was a very. Yeah, he had passed away by that point. Okay. So, yeah, it makes sense. That was a very transformative experience for him, it seems like, and that's why I kind of make the distinction of like the African American culture, African and American cultures and institutionalizations and whatnot, and also comparing like Compton, South Africa, and Mama. You know, it's kind of interesting to see him. It's interesting for him to bridge a gap in that way, rather than, because there is an interesting divide to have within Black culture, like and
Black Americans versus Africans.
Yeah. It's and especially and it's really dope to see one of our most prevalent Black American artists say, "Hey, this is like." This part of our history is really important, and like this is not my exact culture. Like, I guess I come from Compton, but I value it as much, or if not more, than this. So it was really cool to have him put that on like a main stage, and also, like I said, I think further curb the shift of that like of thought and the culture of hip hop at the time. Like, yeah, you know what, younger artists like, yeah, I might have to talk about it. Hell, I'm pretty sure Logic listened to he's like, dang, you know what? Everybody needs to listen to this. Everybody. Yo, 6, I got the album. Like, I'm pretty sure that's why like, a lot of people probably thought that I would have to listen to Pimp Butterfly, seeing how big the impact it was.
I think it's important to talk about Tupac Shakur when it comes to this album. Kendrick has always kind of had a funny relationship with Tupac, because at times it's like, damn, Kendrick, are you obsessed with this man? Because I remember in the Section 80 days before Good Kid even came out, like a big, I don't remember where the interview was because I was trying to find it earlier, and he has several interviews where he references it, but he talks about a story where when in the years leading up to making Section 80, he was visited by Tupac in a dream.
Yeah.
Which, it's in retrospect sounds really funny, but you can tell he's really inspired by the man. And the reason why he wanted March 15th to be the release date was because it was the 20-year anniversary of Me Against the World. That's pretty neat. And then the original title was supposed to be To Pimp a Caterpillar, or at least he was thinking of it being like that because the letters would be like an acronym for Tupac. But then he decided to change Caterpillar to Butterfly to, I guess, show like progression or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm assuming. And then of course, like you said, the outro. I mean, he took an old Tupac interview and cut it
into it.
Yeah,
So beautifully.
Made it seem like he was having a conversation with the man who passed away almost 20 years ago at the time that this was released. So it's remarkable.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, and because especially how Kendrick. We talk about how influential Kendrick is. We talk about how acclaimed he is, quickly acclaimed. And when you're into that kind of stratosphere of acclaim and love and praise in the community, comparisons are natural. So, especially coming from the West Coast, like you're the new king of the West Coast, and you're one of the front man of the West Coast scene. It makes you the Tupac comparisons throughout his career, especially even with especially Section 80 with Tammy, like Tammy's song instead of like Tammy's Evils and Keisha's song instead of Brenda's song. It was like he had the inspiration and he kind of ran with it, and he's like the natural progression of that vibe.
No doubt, yeah.
But still, people were like, "Oh, is he better than Pac? Is he the new Pac? Is he better?
He needs to star in some movies."
Yeah, it's like
then that completes the full cycle. Yeah.
If Kendrick starts acting more, then I mean, shit, he's doing soundtracks. Man, Black Panther sound.
Right.
It's like CD. It's interesting to see. I'm curious to see later on. God forbid Kendrick passes anytime soon, because then I think people would really hammer into comparisons then. Hopefully, I'm curious to see how people are gonna see Kendrick at the end of the day, like, and Pac. Like, how is this dynamic going to shift, and how is this dynamic going? Like, when it's all said and done, who will people hail as the ultimate like West Coast representative?
Well, I guess we don't have to go deep into GOAT lists, but just to briefly touch into it, I feel like normally us rap fans, when we make like our top 10 of all time, when we make our GOAT list, it's always so, and I'm the same way, so I'm not criticizing other people, I'm including myself, but we're always so like golden age biased, but not old era and new era appreciative. So like we'll have Jay-Z, Biggie, Nas, and Eminem, and Andre 3000, like, oh, easy, he's in my top 10, but then we won't include KRS-One or Rakim, or we won't include J. Cole or Drake or some other guys from today.
Yeah.
But I feel like the one guy people don't shy about putting near their top 10 or in their top 10 is Kendrick. And so, I mean, one, that says a lot, right? But I think it was with this album when it came out, because before with Good Kid, like Section 80 was good, of course, but with Good Kid, like you can't just put him in top 10 because of one classic. But when this came out, it was like, oh,
he got two.
Yeah, like I think for me personally, this album put him no doubt in my top 15 and probably close to my top 10. But do you agree with me that this album it was like the game changer for his legacy?
Yeah, I think it's I think Good Kid, Mad City propelled him to superstardom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but To Pimp a Butterfly solidified the legacy, and then following Damn, well, also the EP, but Damn is like a culmination, but also it's just I think at this point he's just really just hey, my legacy's already y'all know what I can do. I'm gonna just do what I want to, and I'm gonna show you why your feelings towards me are justified. Like this is just really just further verification. Like, yep, I'm still the shit. Here you go. It's like it's kind of but he does it in a way that he hasn't lacked off in quality yet. Like because a person I compare this to is like a Ye, in the sense of hey, people love the original like College Dropout trilogy, like College Dropout, Late Registration, Graduation. People love those albums, and then some people did not like 808s and Heartbreak. Like really, like now looking back, like our generation or like a newer generation of people, they kind of like, oh wow, it's not as weird or experimental sounding. I guess at the time, shocking because music nowadays takes a lot of inspiration from that era. So it's like, oh well, I really like this project. So instead of having any dips in his legacy, like how Ye could say, or even a Hove can say, I don't think Kendrick has yet.
He don't miss.
He really don't.
I think it's telling that on Control, a year before or 2 years before this album even came out, he said, "Who's the greatest MC? Kendrick, Jigga, or Nas? Eminem, Andre 3000, the rest of y'all." So he just threw his name.
Yeah.
He lumped himself in there before this even came out. So I guess he knew what he was about to accomplish.
Yeah, he knew. He's like, oh, he just has the balls to do it, man. I think he really just did.
All right.
Ready?
Favorite tracks.
3 favorite tracks. All right. Ooh, I want to. All right. Mortal Man. And I'm going to have to go with Complexion.
Oh, no overlap.
No overlap.
Okay.
I say all right because, bruh, it's all right. It's like, talk about a slapper with a message. Oh my god.
Have you heard people say that it should be the Black American or the Black national anthem of America? That cracks me up.
I was like, yo, y'all are ridiculous with this one. But it's a freaking. The song is. It retains that energy of kind of levity and that atmosphere of levity from Good Kid, Mad City, but still with the lyrical density of like I would say honestly like overly dedicated, or even like a Section 80-esque, or even like of previous works. Let's say that.
Yeah.
I would say more earlier than even Good Kid works. But it's the perfect like in between of hey, we're gonna talk about everything that I feel, but this is also so palpable, so palatable that you won't be able to deny how good the song is. Like it's like
irresistible.
Yeah, it's irresistibly just intoxicating to listen. It's like wow, we gonna be all right. Like this is it's just a great theme song for a lot of different situations, a lot of people. I would say it was a really good song, but I say that on the same note, Complexion. I really like that song because it's a different type of the idea of colorism and the evaluation of people and people's prejudice towards people of darker skin color. It was very interesting to hear him do that, and how him and Rhapsody tackle this in the song, because I remember personally whenever I moved down here, I've experienced colorism, but not to the same degree as I did in Florida. Like going to the South is very different type of experience with color. Like and I still see it to this day, and it's interesting to hear artists speak on certain things and like kind of dissect reasons why, especially so eloquently from both Rhapsody and Kendrick. as to like what's the flawed reasoning behind that, because I think that system is something that is perpetuated and propagated pretty profoundly still today with a lot of people in the black community, and also of course outside people outside our race. But it's an interesting thing to witness and to kind of tackle, because some people truly feel like there's a sort of innate, not superiority, in like, oh, you're better than me because you're light skinned, or you're better because you're dark. It's like they feed into these tropes without even really realizing it. And Kendrick and Rhapsody put it in a very beautiful way as to like the evaluation, like, hey, it's like your blue eye, and one of my favorite bars is like, your blue eyes tell me that your mother couldn't run. I was like, oh yeah. Jesus Christ. And it's like we're putting higher value with something that, for one, comes from a dark place.
Yeah,
but then
it's like, I mean, obviously colorism from white to black, but colorism within black people, and saying your lighter skin tone, like
you have
history,
nice eyes, you have good hair. It's like that doesn't,
the history that comes with the lighter being lighter complexion when you're black. Yeah,
it was a really cool way and really beautiful way to put it. And I think I haven't heard someone do it that eloquently at that point. And also, the chemistry between Rhapsody and Kendrick was really good. Her verse is beautiful. And if anyone, we didn't add her on our honorable mentions, but I definitely recommend going to listen to her projects because they're really great. So, Complexion definitely was a good project. It was a good song to me. And Mortal Man, this is a great outro, bro. And really, like I said, I really love the refrain, like when the shit hit the fan, or the chorus. The Ghost of Mandela, hope my flow stay propelling. Let these words be your earth, moon, and consume your every message. As I leave this army, make room for mistakes and depression. And with that being said, my nigga, let me ask this question. When shit hit the fan, is he still a fan? It's like, I think that's also a great way to encapsulate how people reacted to this project initially. Like that whole, like, hey, I'm not sure if I really want to listen. Like, yeah, it's cool, but I don't really listen to that. I want to listen to Good Kid instead. It's like, when shit hits the fan, I'm talking about some real shit to you, or like something that really bothers me, or like my friends dying, like me feeling like I'm failing the people that are dying back home, or I'm telling you this stuff that isn't the most easy to listen to at times. Why are you still my fan? Like, do you truly value me, or are you just like, or do you truly listen to me, or are you just
am I just something you listen to?
Am I just a passive toy for entertainment? Like, is that it? Am I just the entertainer at the end, or you respect me as a man, a fellow mortal man? I really like that message.
Yes. And then you got the Tupac.
And of course, the Tupac. That was just so crazy. When I first heard this album, I'm like, oh, this motherfucker did not. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah. It's like, first it's the couple lines he says at the end of every song put together as like one long poem. You're like, okay, I mean, that's not a big surprise. But then you hear a man who passed away 20 years ago. You hear his voice, and you're like, oh.
He's like, whoa, what up?
All right, so for me, I had King Kunta, Blacker the Berry, and Institutionalized.
Institutionalized was my alternative.
Yeah, I'll go Blacker the Berry first, since that was one of the singles. I mean, I think lyrically, with the main topics and themes of this album, that's the one that probably hits the hardest. It's definitely the one that is the most introspective for me personally when I listen to it. So, like, for that to be a single for the album, coming after you saw this shift in sound, but it was still very positive, I guess. Whereas this one is not so positive and more just like right there, like, here's the message. And so that one's a big one for me. And I just remember when I first listened to it, I loved everything about it lyrically, but I didn't like the chorus, so it didn't have a lot of replay value for me with the Jamaican chorus. But over time, like, I kind of dug it a bit more, because it's like Jamaica, it's not African or whatever. It's Jamaican. So I kind of liked having that additional black form of music. Yeah, I like having that black representation of music in there in addition to it. And of course, we keep mentioning Tupac. Well, the term "blacker the berry" is a reference to Tupac as well, with the song "Keep Your Head Up," where he says "blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice," referring to dark-skinned women. But
which is a true fact.
and now Kendrick is applying it to just black people in general. And the song probably has my favorite bar from the whole album, where he says, "I'm African American, I'm African." So he kind of makes that distinction where he's like, "I'm African, I'm black, but I'm black. Yeah. I'm black and I'm black. I'm African American, I'm African, I'm black as the heart of a fucking Aryan." That one always hits hard. King Kunta, that's probably the funnest song in the whole album. Just funky banger on there, right? I guess earlier I mentioned "I" and "Alright" as songs as I could see on the radio. I'm pretty sure King Kunta got radio play also, so I forgot to mention King Kunta. And the fact that he named a song King Kunta, I love the fact in itself, because with it being a black empowerment album, to have a song roughly about Kunta Kinte as like a slave who had to cut off his foot in order to escape, and now he's calling him a king. I think it's like really symbolic of the progression of like, look where we once were, but look where we are now as a people, and look what we can be. And I think there's some like crossover with he's King Kendrick, and so like King Kunta, I guess he's saying like, I'm king now, but in our past we were slaves. I think it's like a reminder of that. Yeah. And it probably has my second favorite bar from the whole album, where he says, "I can dig rapping, but a rapper with a ghostwriter, what the fuck happened?" and then the line right after it, he goes, "I swore I wouldn't tell. Most of y'all sharing bars like you got the bottom bunk of a two-man cell." And this came out like maybe 2 months before Drake and Meek Mill did the Rico song together, and then all the rumors of Drake having ghostwriters with Quentin Miller came out. So in retrospect, it's a bar that I like a lot more now than I did then, or it means a lot more to me now. And then Institutionalized is the song that comes immediately after King Kunta in the track list. And I really like it because it's like the ultimate blend of Good Kid, Mad City with To Pimp a Butterfly, because the themes of it, talking about institutional racism, that gives you that To Pimp a Butterfly theme, but then talking about the effects of it leading to that like street lifestyle around him growing up, and then you got the Good Kid themes.
Yeah, I also really like from that song when you talk about Good Kid like themes, or I guess musical similarities, would be the way he kind of goes into the character's perspective of like, fuck, what am I supposed to do? I see all these walking licks, like, and he's talking about his friends talking to him about like robbing people at the Grammy, like possibly robbing people at the Grammys, right, and doing all this extra shit. It's like, and the vocal inflections, and then it's like, I guess I should have. It was a really cool moment. I really love this. That, and I also like how it's a collaboration between him and Snoop.
Yeah, I love Snoop Dogg being in there as like this OG presence. Like, he's kind of like this, just the OG telling with the outro, the tale, just like overseeing the whole thing. Yeah,
he's like, well, I've been where you've been, Kendrick. Like, I've like private jets and passports, presidential glass floors. He's like, but once upon a time, it's like, shit happens again.
You can take the boy out the hood, but you can't take the hood out the homie.
Yep.
Never forget that one. Well, does that wrap up To Pimp a Butterfly? That was a lot of fun to talk about.
Yeah, man. It was a great album. Fantastic project.
Number 4. Well deserved.
This may come to a surprise for y'all for number 3. Speaking about other California natives, we have the Brockhampton Saturation trilogy.
Yes, not one album, not 2 albums, not 3 albums.
All
3 albums. I guess we have some explaining to do.
Yeah.
But I guess, so we had a lot of discussion about how to treat the Saturation trilogy, because we knew that if we treated them separately, we would have all three of them in our top 20, and how's that fair to everyone else?
Exactly.
So I apologize, Brockhampton, because you're deserving of more spots than this, but when you release 3 albums in the span of 6 months, it made it an easier decision.
Yeah, it's like you guys kind of dropped 3 really good projects in our top 10 or top 20 of the decade list.
Yeah.
It's like, well, shit. But even if you don't want to count, and I think another like reason behind this is because I've heard arguments for like, okay, well, Saturation 1's the best one, Saturation 2 is the best one. Usually Saturation 2 and 3 I hear.
Yeah.
But it's like I've heard arguments and I kind of understand each one. I'm like, okay, yeah, no, that's really good songs. Or that's really good points. They focus more on this sound on this one. They sound more refined on this, but it's more raw on this one. So it's kind of like, well, in this way, we are accounting for all of it, and we are acknowledging the quality and like it's up to you, the listener, to say, hey, all right, yeah, of course you could agree and disagree throughout this whole list. You could be, oh, Kendrick got 4, these guys could go to hell. It's done. Like, I'm done. But it's like, it's up to you. It's your opinion. We value that as well. We value the feedback. But by doing this as well with the trilogy, it's like we give you the option to make your own opinion. Like, all right, you know what? I wouldn't put the trilogy on there. I'd probably just put 2, or maybe I'll just put 1. Hell, I'll maybe switch it around. Gives other people the option too.
Yeah, I mean, The Weeknd came out with 3 mixtapes over the span of maybe 8 months in 2011, and then he released that as trilogy. So for them to have 3 albums in the span of 6 months, it doesn't feel that wrong to lop them together like that. And I mean, Brockhampton themselves, they refer to it as a trilogy. They released it as a trilogy when Saturation 3 came out.
Yep.
And then I mean, if there can be double albums like All Eyes on Me and
Stank on You, Speaker Box, and Love Below.
Yeah, and
Life After Death.
Yeah, Life After Death.
Life After Death, or even most recently like a Scorpion type of vibe with Drake. Is like, if you could do double projects, it's kind of like,
yeah, this is 30 total songs, so I mean,
yeah, it's like, come on, people.
So anyways, so that there's our reasoning. So I guess our introduction to Brockhampton, we don't have to go too far into detail about how we found out about them, because as we mentioned on the American Boyfriend episode, we found out about Kevin Abstract through Brockhampton. So there's our introduction there. So I guess when detailing a little bit about the group, I guess it makes sense to start with Kevin Abstract, since he has that famous solo project that we talked about earlier, and he's also kind of seen as the group in itself. But
he's the front man.
Yeah, Brockhampton, they're a group. It's kind of hard to say where they're from, because when these albums were released, they all lived in a house together in Los Angeles.
Well, they did they got together in Texas, and then they moved to LA to do the Saturation trilogy. Yeah,
members Kevin Abstract, Amir Van, Merlin Wood, and Matt Champion, the 4 of them, they all went to high school together in a city in North Houston called the Woodlands. So that's where most of them know each other. So I think if I had to put a label to them, I'd just say Texas. But I know Don McLennan is from Massachusetts, or Vermont, somewhere northeast, right? And then I think Joba is also from Texas, but yeah, so most of them are from Texas, so you could call them a Texas group. They formed in San Marcos, Texas, I guess, so you can give them that origin. But yeah, when this album came out, they all moved together into a house. A lot of them had to drop out of school or quit their jobs or whatever, because you have to keep in mind, we mentioned Kevin Abstract was only 20 when American Boyfriend came out, so he was still 20 when this came out. Most of them were in their early 20s.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure all of them were at least younger than 25. So just these young men moving together to live in a house, and they just had this dream to make music. And I believe, I don't know how true this is, but supposedly when the thought process started going, they ended up making the first album, Saturation, in a span of 2 weeks.
Yeah, Joba apparently mixed and mastered the whole album in 3 days.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, he's like, and it's funny in an interview, he says like, yeah, I definitely hated that. Is that I should have never done that, but You know, I was proud of my friends. You know, not proud of myself doing that, but I'm proud of my friends. I was just like, oh Jesus, the toll. But I'm glad he came through with that because the first Saturation was quite the shocker and quite the flair of an entrance to make.
I just remember my introduction to it was seeing it on the Rap Genius forums like the day it dropped and saying, oh, this is the best album to come out. And then I was like, you know, I mentioned on the American Boyfriend episode, like I looked them up and I found out Kevin Abstract was in it. So then I had to listen to it. And they already had a bunch of singles and music videos out at that point, like Face, Heat, Gold, and Star. So like I just remember those were the first songs I checked out. And I mean, that's damn near half the album in itself. But I don't know. I just remember watching, I think it was Star, the first song I listened to from the project.
That's what you choose for your first.
Yeah, and I just remember they're in the orange jumpsuits on golf carts and their bodies are dyed blue, and I just remember I'm like, okay, here's Kevin Abstract's part, and it's just, you know, the least, if all you had heard at that point was a couple songs from American Boyfriend, just not at all what you'd expect to hear from a verse.
Yeah, he starts off the whole thing. Heath Ledger with some dreads. I just gave my nigga head, standing on my two legs. Fuck what that nigga done said. It's like, what the hell? Also, I'm not gonna lie to you. After I listened to this verse, I definitely checked out Shawn Mendes' music because he's like, I don't fuck with no white boys unless the nigga Shawn Mendes. I was like, who's Shawn fucking Mendes? And then I listened, I'm like, he's alright, you know, he's okay, you know, on the low ski.
I know I can treat you better.
He's like, on the low ski, you know. I understand, Kevin. But it's, I could definitely see how you would. Saturation 1, honestly, my first song was Heat. And I literally
the first song on the album.
I was like, and I remember listening to Heat. I was like, okay, so it's like Mi amo Roberto, es es mi amigo Jabari, nosotros odiamos a la policía. It's like, we hate the police. Because Booth is back. I was like, oh wow, okay, all right, this intro, and then just the beat kicks in. And I'm like, oh wow, it's like Amir's verse is just super hard hitting, super. It's almost. It's not necessarily horrorcore. It reminded me something of like an old Odd Future project.
For sure.
And I remember, like, even just from the way Amir was like, who didn't call the cops on my... It's like the echo box effect on it. It's kind of sound like it was coming out of an old megaphone. It reminded me of something, it kind of like on some Tina from Bastard or Pigs. It just really... Or even... something, the way that Dom, honestly, his verse too, kind of reminded me something akin to like an old Haji Beats, like mellow hype type of approach to the song, and it grabbed me by surprise because like, wow, these guys are all. If I'm comparing them to all these people that I actually do respect, like musically, on my first listen through, I'm like, these guys might have something going for them. Like, that would be pretty good. And just the way it was ending, it was kind of like with Joe Bird with the bridge, like, fuck you. It's like, okay, you definitely bring some energy. So what else? It piqued my interest, and it's like, what's going on from here? And then the way it just goes into gold, I'm like, oh, wow. Not exactly what I expected. Follow, but okay, cool. And yeah. I think that's the thing about their, as a general, is like, they have... Because they have so many members and because they have so many diverse sounds, it's like, y'all, I don't know what to expect next, really, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, I can just remember going through the first listen of it, and I mean, first of all, I remember being blown away because I remember on the first listen, I was like, oh man, they were right. This is the best album I've heard all year. But yeah, I remember being blown away, one, by the diversity of Kevin Abstract on there, because a lot of it was like pretty similar to what I had heard from American Boyfriend, and then just how different a lot of it was from what I heard from American Boyfriend. And then yeah, I mean, I just remember for like the entire next month I just listened to it probably like every other day at the very least. Like I listen to this thing every single day or every other day at the very least. And the next thing I know, so this came out on June 9th. So next thing I know, August 2nd. So not even 2 months after this had been out. So this is still fresh in my mind. Like this is still, album of the year. I'm listening to this all the time. Still fresh in my mind. Less than 2 months, the single Gummy comes out, and Kevin Abstract is all over Twitter talking about how the team's putting together another album already.
Yep, June 3rd, 2017. We will release our second album this summer. Kevin tweeted out, and it was interesting because I'm similar to you. I'm thinking because I really like the song "Waste" off of Saturation 1,
right?
And also, I was like, dang, that was a cool ending to this project, but I kind of I really want some more Brockhampton. Sometime I really want to know if they're gonna release some singles or anything. And before I even knew it, I'm like, oh wow, a whole album? Shit, Chris came early.
and the singles that they released for the second one were so good. It was like my attention just completely turned. Where normally I can be so high on an album's release impact for a few months, where now my attention is completely turned because Gummy comes out and they start releasing singles every week. And so Gummy comes out, and I remember being blown away. And then Swamp came out, and I'm like, all right, that's pretty cool. And then Junkie came out, and I was blown away again. And then I think Sweet was the fourth one that came out a day or two before August 25th, the actual release date of Saturation 2. And yeah, it's just it's just so silly that I could listen to an album all the time and it's still so fresh, and then next thing you know, they're releasing singles for their next album.
Yes, it's usually people will have a whole tour cycle first, they'll make a whole promo cycle, and then but they just said they subverted that whole ideology. It's you know what, no, we got the second one coming already. It's just relax yourselves, people. We're not done yet. Take a chill, Phil. We got some more coming. And with this project, it just sounded like they just capitalized even further on the sounds that garnered my attention the first time with Saturation 1. But in a manner of, they seem to me personally, it's even though there's only been a couple months time span difference between the releases of the projects, they're already dealing with their, I guess, new levels of fame and different perspectives that they provided throughout the project. Saturation 2 was interesting to hear, and it was very it still made it a refreshing sound, even though some of the styles were similar. It's funny because by the time you get to Brockhampton 3, I think the needle drops the Mere Van flow, just
da 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 da, the half bar.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's it was, but by the time Saturation 2 rolled around, it was still pretty fresh and still pretty wow, these guys are not playing and they're keeping everything flowing at a rapid pace. Because Gummy, when you compare singles, Heat, a starter track, Heat is nothing like Gummy. Both hit. Both have interesting beats. But no. That shit was just I was wow. And going how Gummy flows into Queer, and how Queer is even just the verses, Dom coming with the quick flow, every verse a heist for all you underlying feelings. Got canaries on the window, smell like roses on the ceiling. Is it's almost more of that boy band aesthetic was being provided and refined by the time Saturation 2 was flowing out. It's because Saturation 1, on the later half of it, songs like Milk and Face, and of course they had on Tupac, it was you could kind of hear this NSYNC influence. But on Saturation 2, on song Sweet, literally like Jova talks about, like, oh yeah, it's like I just had to cover it in sync with my Walkman and like see that's me. It was really interesting to hear them actually kind of own up to that ideology and really use this pop and their genre influences on their shoulder without making it corny or too obvious.
I think when Saturation 2 came out, I would say I had three main takeaways from Saturation 2. One was that when I first listened, I mean, obviously I knew the singles and I loved the singles, but when I listened to it in full, my first takeaway was, I think I like this even more than Saturation 1. Like, that was my first takeaway. It was like, how did they just do that? My second takeaway was the progression of Kevin, because on Saturation 1, Kevin is really just like the hook guy, and he does a really good, like, I would say he's one of the stars, like one of the people who shine the most on the first tape, doing the chorus for songs like Gold, Boys, Fake, Bank, Bump, Cash, Milk. Like, he does all the choruses basically, and he does a great job. But then on Saturation 2, like, all of a sudden he just decides on a couple of songs, like, I'm gonna rap my ass off. On Gummy and Junkie in particular, he just goes off. So that's my second takeaway, is that Kevin decided, like, all right, I'm gonna rap a little bit too. And then third takeaway, I would say, was I admired how Saturation 2, and I'll get to this a little bit more when I'll talk about what I feel about with Saturation 3. But with Saturation 1, I really felt like Kevin, like I said in the chorus, was one of the people who really shined brightly. And then Don McLennan, rapping wise, I thought he was one of the major bright spots. Like his verses on Face, Gold, Swim, Bump, Cash. Face in particular, I always loved his verse where he's like, it feels like I can see the past in your eyes. In that entire verse, I love it. And so with Saturation 1, I had these two definitive guys that really stuck out to me, with Dom and then Kevin. With number 2, it was like Amir stole the show for me, where he appears on like every track. And even if it's a really simple verse where he's just like, oh, I used to be a dealer, all this stuff, I'm a pop star now. Like, even if it can get a little generic at times, like he really went off on every verse, and it seemed like basically every song he was on. And so that was like my third takeaway, was that normally with rap groups, it's like if you really like a guy, if a guy really sticks out to you on one album, that's usually the guy who sticks out on every album of theirs. Whereas where it went from Kevin doing choruses to Kevin sticking out on rapping, and then Dom being the big takeaway rapper to now Amir being the big takeaway rapper, I really admired how, like, they have a big roster, but any guy can take that spotlight for the album and really steal the show.
And it's funny that you say that, because I felt that way about Amir and Matt, to be honest with you. And similar on both this and Matt came to the forefront for me more on this project, especially with his verse on Junkie, because I was like, oh wow, that was different. I was not expecting that one. But it was, and but Amir's, like, the way Amir manipulated like the pockets and the flows and like in the beats, he always sounded, it never sounded like he shouldn't be there. It never sounded like, oh no, they kind of, maybe should have threw Kevin there. Like, oh, why didn't they just give that to Job or something? He always sounded natural and at home. Like, even with songs like Sweet, it's a very short verse. Got a record, but I'm clean as they come. On Godzilla, when they see me, they run. On 37 used to run from the buzz. The undercovers got a duck when they come. I moved out in a couple months. I'm gonna be a pop star. They call me a thug. Used to write raps on the back of the bus. Now I'm in the front seat, shifting gears. It's it's something so, yeah, it's like, it's so short, so sweet, but it was a perfect sweet spot on the song. It's like, and I think Amir really mastered that on this project, and that ability carried over so well into the third project, Saturation 3, and same thing. And I think going into Saturation 3, the other people, I feel like with each project, someone new shines, someone new kind of pops out to me.
I mean, that's why I brought it up, right? Because I felt like they have that roster where I said like Dom and then Amir, anyone can steal the show. But honestly, I have a hard time picking who stole the show on Saturation 3. I think I'm at a point now, 3 years after it's come out, where I can safely say Saturation 3 is my favorite. So maybe that's why, is that I just feel like everyone stole the show, but I don't know. I might go with Kevin again. I know at this point I'm like a Kevin Abstract fanboy or whatever, but because Kevin he handled the choruses again, but then he had verses like Stupid and Alaska on the third one.
Alaska.
I guess before we go too far into Saturation 3, we should mention that it was released on December 15th. So a little more time between the second one and the third one. And I remember like in the moment, I remember some people were freaking out when it was October, because it's like, oh, it's been 2 months in Saturation 2. It took 2 months last time, so where's the album?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, fine. If you really need 4 months to make an album, go for it. We're happy with a year, right? So, yeah. And then I don't think they really released... they didn't release any singles long before Saturation 3 came out. And I kind of like that, because it made the whole album really feel like a surprise.
Yeah.
Whereas with Saturation 2, like, I don't know if this was all incidental, but it worked out perfectly the way the singles came out for number 2 when they were so good, but it was still, Saturation 1 was still so fresh in your mind that it was just like, holy crap, I'm being bombarded with good music. Whereas with Saturation 3, it really felt like more of a surprise, because it wasn't until they made like that short movie Billy Star. It came out like 2 days before Saturation 3 came out.
Yeah.
That was the first time you heard any songs that would be on Saturation 3. Like I think you heard Bleach on there maybe, and one other song. So I really liked how Saturation 3, they took their time, 4 months, and then they did no singles.
Yeah, it was interesting to see that they took this route, because at the time, Saturation 3 was promoted as like the last studio album. Like they were kind of like, well, this is gonna be it. This is the end of the trilogy. There's some infighting kind of being thrown about. Like the idea that infighting was being thrown about or going about inside the group, and they're like, this is probably gonna be it, guys. Like, and then later on, they obviously say like, oh no, there's gonna be a 4th album, Team Effort or Puppy or whatever.
In the aftermath, we learned to never listen to what Kevin Abstract has to say on Twitter.
Pretty much.
But
and then unless some merch is dropping, I'm not, because that's the only time he's actually accurate.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was kind of even raised the height of the hype even higher, because you're like, whoa, dang, you guys just dropped 3 crazy projects. You guys dropped 2 great projects within a few months span, and now you're just another third project that we're gonna hopefully assume is gonna be good and on the same level. And you're just gonna say you're done, like this is it. And it's just like, oh wow, this gotta be good then. This gotta be great. And I think when people first heard this, like the tracks, like the way the whole shit starts off with Boogie is like, whoa, okay, well, this is Brockhampton, but this is different. This is when I talked about them using their influences and kind of trying, and also going for more that boy band direction, I think this album was them solidifying and really taking that to the next level, because Boogie sounds like something that could be from an old Marshall Mathers, maybe some Marshall. I could hear a 3 sax hop on this. It's a really,
I could see that, like Stankonia era Outkast. Yeah,
it's like they really, which Outkast, we didn't mention, like we talked about their influences, but we never really talked about who. Kevin Abstract, they all, I feel like, take influences from a bunch of eras and different artists, but some of the other groups like a Outkast or even a...
We mentioned Odd Future. I think that's a big one.
Odd Future is a really big one. Even to the way that they utilize the members is almost a Wu-Tang-esque, which is odd as hell to say that. Like Brockhampton is similar to Wu-Tang.
What other crew runs that deep though, right?
Yeah, the other crew runs that deep, but actually utilizes all their members thoroughly on a project, or showcases them and their talents really well. And I think on this project, just from the first 3 tracks alone, Boogie, Zipper, and Johnny, they all flowed pretty well together, but it's a darkening of the sound that wasn't present on Saturation 1 nor 2. Because on Johnny, it's like, like Joba's verse is like, it's kind of, and it slows things down. He went from the crazy ballistic, like, super funky, almost Sugar Hill-esque boogie to like, I'm a shithead son, and I'm bad at growing up. My life ain't been the same since my dog died, since my girl left. It's like, Jesus, Joba.
Right, yeah.
But then the bridge is like, still has that eccentric flair and that upbeat distortion of like, baby, I've been tripping off, tie me up and send them off. Is like, it's still reminiscent of Brockhampton, what we know, but it's just refined, and it's just like, all right, what else can we throw at the wall, and it will all actually fit into this jigsaw puzzle. And
yes, I'd like to clarify that my first listen through Saturation 3, once again, my first thought was, crap, I think I like this one even more than the past 2. And then also you kind of mentioning like the sound almost has like a feeling or like a tone to it on Saturation 3. When I listen to Saturation 1, it's like it feels like summertime, and it's because when I listened to it, it came out in June. And when I listen to Saturation 3, it feels like winter time, because when I listened to it, it came out in December. And I think before we get into favorite tracks, just we have to emphasize they released 3 great albums in the span of 6 months.
Yeah, which is fucking nuts.
3 albums in the span of 6 months.
3 quality albums in 6 months.
All right.
Granted, it is a group of 14 members, well, 13 now, but Jesus, that's ridiculous. And I think for 3 favorite tracks, I think we're gonna switch it up this time. Aren't we? We're gonna try to go 2 favorite tracks.
Yeah, we'll go 2, and we'll go a little rapid fire. We'll try to make it quick, since it's a lot of albums.
Yeah.
So two favorites for each album. We'll go back and forth. Like, you go Saturation, I go Saturation. You go, okay.
Okay, so Saturation 1, favorite tracks, Heat, and I'm probably gonna say, I'm gonna say Heat and Tupac. Actually, no, Heat and Waste.
Okay.
Real quick, like the beginning and the end. I was like, it just stuck with me. Heat, the way they set the tone for everything. One of my favorite Dom verses on that project. Amir kind of just established who the hell he was from the very beginning, and just kind of ran with it. And Waste at the end, Bareface, which is like I was like, oh wow, they have a guy that can really sing his ass off on this.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah, sometimes I like think about which of the 3 Bareface tracks, Waste, Summer, and Teen, are my favorite, and I just can't decide because like they're all tied for 1.
Yeah, it's like that's the thing is I've tried. I really like Waste. I really like Waste, but then I listened to Summer again today. I'm like, Jesus, this is
with the guitar. Yeah. All right, so I had Star. So like I said, Star was really like the first Brockhampton song I had heard. It's a stupid song, and it's really silly, but it cracks me up because it's just constant name drops. So, references like
JT.
Yeah. And then, I mean, Kevin's verse, that was like probably my favorite verse of 2017. And that's despite the fact that he rhymes "ain't fuck with me" 4 times in a row, and then immediately rhymes "on a Friday" 4 times in a row. And I don't know if I've ever seen that lack of diversity in rhyming produce such a memorable verse, but there you go. My second favorite, I went with Cash. One of my favorite Kevin choruses on the album with the "Get Money, Big Band, Simple Bands." I love Kevin's very brief verse on there too, where he's like, rolling in my truck, gotta keep it tucked, cause why do you wanna fuck? And then he keeps going. Yeah, I mean, everyone really goes with these really brief verses, but they all kind of hit hard with what's on their mind. And then I love Dom's verse, of course, and then it transitions into Joba's part with like the me against the world. All right, Saturation 2. I said Gummy and Junkie. It's no coincidence that I said hearing Kevin rapping like that just really blew me away, and he went off. And then those I would say were my two favorite. So yeah, those two singles were just absolute bombastic rapping on both of them. It's unreal. I mean, that's all I have to say about those two, I think.
If Red Junkie, that was kind of like a no-brainer because everyone on that song slid so crazy. And my other favorite probably would have to be, I'd probably say Swamp, honestly, because I'd bump like fucking commas up on the outside. It's just it's a cool song to just ride around to and just do whatever to. It's a feel good kind of song, but with a nice different kind of flair to it, similar to like Outkast, a certain swing to it that I like. And then for Saturation 3, favorite songs. This was the hard part. The really hard part.
Yeah.
So Saturation 3, I would have to say that I really like Bleach, because Bleach is, they kind of go into that bag of the boy band esque with the Ryan Beatty singing like "Ooh, got the feeling," that pop vibe. And I think that was like the first song I heard from them that I was like, you know what, this could be a decent hit. Like this could.
I'm pretty sure if you go on Spotify and you check the streaming numbers before Ginger came out, because now Sugar I think is their top song.
Probably.
But before Ginger came out, Bleach was like consistently their number one song after Saturation 3 came out.
I can see that because Bleach it's a really catchy, really good song. But I like how it's something that could be radio friendly, but it's also relatively dark and really true to like still being Brockhampton and what they're doing, and all their verses are pretty introspective and memorable. But my second favorite track would probably be, I'm gonna say Rental. I was gonna say Johnny, but because I love Sister, but I don't like Nation like as much, which is odd. But I really like Rental a lot. Like, throw me in the 5, baby. I survived. I was not ready for Matt Champion on that song, nor was I ready for Dom the way he hopped on it. It's pretty dope. So I appreciate Matt and Kevin singing and going for it. It's pretty good.
It's funny you mentioned those two because I even wrote down here like Bleach ? Rental ? Because I nearly picked those, but I didn't pick either of them. I ended up going with Stains. And what I like about Stains is like the beat before the outro comes, but the beat in the verses are some of like the most straightforward rap that they've ever produced, and I kind of like that with Dom and Amir's verses and Matt Champion too. And so I like, it's just the boys reflecting on their rise to fame. It's a really chill song. But then when Joba comes in with the hook with the "Be There Any Minute," and then the outro, how it just builds up with that hook. I love the way that song is put together. And then the second one I picked was Alaska. And so I loved Kevin's verse on Alaska. I love how they incorporated a G-Funk type beat. And then at the end of the song, how they have that beat switch to Matt's verse, where right before they have the Joba with the "walk through doors" as like the kind of separator. And so I had to pick that one as my second favorite.
I can see that. And speaking of Joba, he definitely was one of those people that we talk about shining on this, like a different person shining.
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely came through because that Sister verse, and then the way he did the hooks on here and the bridges, excellent work. and saturated the game. And I'm pretty sure since they're a couple more albums in and probably a few more to go,
Yeah.
they're here to stay. And hopefully they help create the next butterfly of the game. Help nourish. All right, y'all. Hope y'all got some good times. Hope y'all poured up. Hope y'all ready to slide. Have a good night, day, whenever you listen to this.
And prepare for the #1 album next week.
Oh yeah, prepare yourself. Grab 2 photos, please. Oh my God, grab all your shorties.